President Joe Biden meets with France President Emmanuel Macron. They're talking about, well, a lot of things, but not much that we can hear because they only take about 4 questions total from the media. And one of the questions, Joe Biden can't even hear anything about it. So he just kind of rambles off into nothingness. Now, while the world is watching this horrendous activity in China, the protesters being literally dragged out of their homes, as you can see here, we're asking ourselves, is the White House going to say anything about this? Because we've heard from the dictator in Canada, Justin Trudeau. He even condemned what's happening in China. We've heard from other people like the Prime Minister of the UK. He said something about this as well, sort of condemning Chinese protest, the pain inflicted upon the Chinese protests and calling the golden era over. So Joe Biden, what do you have to say about this? Well, we'll have to listen in a minute because he basically walks out of the room before John Kirby comes in and does cleanup. But let's see how the very interesting meeting with France went. This is President Joe Biden with the French President Emmanuel Macron, making sure that they get a nice, solid handshake and never lets go.
The President.
Amis indéfectibles dans les moments de triomphe et d'épreuve, la France et les États-Unis affronteront l'avenir comme nous l'avons toujours fait, confiants dans nos capacités communes, soutenus par la force de nos valeurs partagées, sans se laisser décourager par les défis qui nous attendent. Et les liens que nous construisons aujourd'hui entre nos étudiants, nos entreprises, nos pionniers, permettront à notre alliance de continuer à prospérer et à se renforcer pendant les décennies à venir. Donc, bienvenue à nouveau, Monsieur le Président, et à la délégation française. Je suis honoré de vous avoir ici et je me réjouis de passer une merveilleuse journée ensemble. Que Dieu bénisse nos deux nations et que Dieu protège nos troupes.
Okay, so very, very interesting. It sort of felt a little bit of a pullback from the other president there, Mr. Macron. But people are watching some of this stuff and they've got questions about capacity because they come out after that and they only take literally 4 questions. This is what it looked like. Joe Biden has a very, very limited time, very busy man, and he can't take a whole lot of questions. So he explains to the press, look, I've got a list of people here that I'm going to call on, and we've only got 4 of them. Okay, I've got 2, he got 2. We sort of drew names out of a hat. Get ready, press. You're up.
All right, we're going to take, we're each going to call on 2 people, a total of 2 people, total of 4 all total.
4 total.
And the first questioner is going to be from AFP, Miss End.
Okay, we get 1 question. Somebody comes out. They ask something like this. A couple other questions. You can hear there's a total of 4 of them in total. But one of them comes out. It's a little bit blurry, so it doesn't even count. So remember, we've got 4. We sort of want 4 answers. Let's see what we can glean from this question.
Mr. President, will you leave Washington with the assurance that you will be able to deal with these massive subventions? The journalist doesn't have a microphone. Do you think there's a risk of generating divisions?
I'll answer the last question since I didn't hear any of it. I didn't understand a word of it, so I'll answer it.
Didn't understand a word of it. Didn't understand a dang thing that she said. I didn't understand anything either.
I'll answer the last question since I didn't hear any of it. I didn't understand a word of it, so I'll answer it.
So I'll answer it. Okay, so we don't know much about the president, about hearing anything. Very, very confusing. And so after he answers a question that he doesn't know what the question was, he turns over to another pre-screened reporter and we get another question.
Okay, who's the next question? Got my list here. My turn to call on someone? Right? Okay, how about NPR, Tom Marquis?
Yeah, it's your turn, Joe. It goes 1, 1. Then it's you again, and then it's him again. So, okay, he's got another question out there. Woo! All right, so we're finally going to get to an actual answer from the president. We've got that right here, and let's check in and see. Finally, we're going to get some substance from our commander-in-chief after a very brave question from this gentleman.
Emmanuel Macron doit s'entretenir dans les prochains jours, les prochaines semaines avec Vladimir Poutine. Le lien est maintenu depuis le début de la guerre. Vous n'avez pas toujours été d'accord avec cela. Est-ce qu'aujourd'hui vous approuvez?
We hear that you will be talking to President Putin anytime soon. What is your approach? And as the Ukrainian war seems to be at a turning point, do you feel realistic that President Zelensky is putting a condition to open negotiations, and that is the return of Crimea to Ukraine?
Negotiations with Russia.
Look, there's one way for this war to end, the rational way.
Okay.
Putin to pull out of Ukraine, number one. But it appears he's not going to do that. He's paying a very heavy price for failing to do it, but he's inflicting incredible carnage on the civilian population of Ukraine, bombing nurseries, hospitals, children's homes. It's sick what he's doing. But the fact of the matter is, I have no immediate plans to contact Mr. Putin. Mr. Putin is, let me choose my words very carefully. I'm prepared to speak with Mr. Putin if, in fact, there is an interest in him deciding he's looking for a way to end the war. He hasn't done that yet. If that's the case, in consultation with my French and my NATO friends, I'll be happy to sit down with Putin to see what he has in mind.
Wow, so that's a little bit of a difference, wasn't it? I mean, we heard previously from Jake Sullivan and John Kirby and Lloyd Austin and everybody that really the only way for this to end was if Putin relinquished everything, got out of Ukraine, and he gave up everything, right? Basically came to terms with whatever Zelensky wanted. And we were all sitting here going, well, that's curious, because Jake Sullivan was even saying that Putin needed to be brought up on war crimes. You remember that? We played the clips here. I've got them saved. We can go back and pull them up if we have to. But he did. Zelensky did. Everybody was saying the only way, no negotiations at all, the only way was if it's total victory, which is very curious because this is now different. And it's also very curious because this is what everybody who's not Joe Biden and the Democrats has been saying for a long time. Why isn't there even a conversation about this? Because it seems like if the only resolution is Putin dies, that there's never going to be an end to this. And is that what you want? So now this is different. And there's another twist to this. He's also saying he's going to talk to NATO. Did you hear him say we're going to go hang out with Zelensky and talk to Ukraine about their input on this? I didn't. He said he's only going to be talking with our NATO friends. Let's listen.
He hasn't done that yet. In the meantime, I think it's absolutely critical what Emmanuel said. We must support the Ukrainian people. The idea
with
that Putin is ever going to defeat Ukraine is beyond comprehension. Imagine them trying to occupy that country for the next 2, 5, 10, 20 years, if they could. If they could. He's miscalculated every single thing he initially calculated. He thought he'd be greeted with open arms by the Russian-speaking portions of the Ukrainian population. Go back and read his speech when he invaded, when I said they were going to invade, and they did when we said they were.
Oh my gosh. We played the clips of those here too. We had Lloyd Austin and John Kirby sitting there in those weird the Secretary of Defense sort of press briefings. Remember they gave us? And remember when they moved 3,500 troops over and then 8,500 troops? So maybe it's all coming together now. Joe Biden was saying, yeah, they were going to invade, maybe because they wanted them to. Maybe that's why the token 8,500 troops was not meant to actually dissuade the 130,000 that were piling up on the border.
I can read the speech he made. He talked about him with needing to be another Peter the Great. He talked about the need for the people that Kyiv is the mother lode of Russian identity in the beginning, et cetera, et cetera. He's just miscalculated across the board. And so the question is, what is his decision? How does he get himself out of the circumstance he's in? I'm prepared, if he's willing to talk, to find out what he's willing to do, but I'll only do it in consultation with my NATO allies.
NATO allies.
I'm not going to do it on my own.
Wow. So
Thank you.
Didn't have Zelensky in that list of people he was going to be conversating with in order to reach that reconciliation with Russia. Pretty dramatic change there. And all right, so we got a coherent answer from the president, right? After a rocky start, difficult time with some questions and picking them. That's actually a French question that he got asked, and he answered it. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Glad to have some insight on that. So turning our attention from Russia, Ukraine, there's a major issue taking place in another part of the world that has a lot of American, unfortunately, intertwined interests because of the outsourcing of all of our, basically everything to China. Mr. President, before you leave here after this very historic meeting with the French, can you please tell us if you have any words for those peaceful protesters there in China?
Thank you, folks. All right.
So do you have a message to the protesters in China you spoke about Iran?
Man! No question. No answer. Nothing to talk about there. Sir, anything with the protesters in China? And walks right out the door. They made it through with their scripted questions without getting a single question about China. And you can see Emmanuel gives him the old pat on the back. He's like, we did it, old boy. There you go. Nice job, Joe. You did it. Let's get some ice cream. All right, so they wrap up their very interesting meeting with the president of France and the president of the United States. And so we're going to listen to what the actual administration says, what their response is to some of this. We've got John Kirby, who is coming up here in a quick second. But first, let's talk about our friends over at Goldco. Goldco, my friends, you know that if you have an IRA, a 401k, or a savings account, that things are scary out there. The Biden administration has already printed more money in the past 2 years than the previous 100 years combined. It's insane. The national debt hit a record $30 trillion. Inflation is the highest we've seen since 1982. It's only a matter of time before this house of cards comes crashing down. If you have retirement savings, your money could be at serious risk. Talk to my friends over at Goldco. See how you can protect your retirement with gold and silver before it's too late. Go to robertlikesgold.com. They'll give you $10,000 or more in free silver. When you open up a qualifying account, that's robertlikesgold.com. They're an A+ rated business with the Better Business Bureau. So be sure to check out our friends at Goldco. All right, so let's chime in and see what John Kirby has to tell us about the White House's official position on China, because, we all want to know. We heard from Trudeau. We heard from the UK. We've got questions. Mr. President, the White House, do you have anything to say for the protesters in China?
Critics accusing the White House of being too soft in its response to those Chinese protesters pushing back against their communist leader.
All right, White House National Security Council Coordinator John Kirby, Admiral Kirby, is here to respond. Admiral, how do you feel about the lack of firmness in the response from the administration? Is there a reason why we're being so soft about and not supporting fully the protesters on the ground and what they're standing for?
Other than love it?
Along with the journalists that are getting beaten?
Hey, Brian, good morning to y'all. Good to be with you guys. I would not say at all that we would agree with criticism that we've been less than firm or consistent. In fact, Brian, we've been very, very consistent about the right of peaceful protest, and we've been very vocal about it in China just over the last few days. We believe that these individuals should be able to peacefully protest and assemble and to make their minds known to their government there in China, just like we've said the same in Iran and around the world. And we stand up for peaceful protest, and again, we've been very consistent about that.
Well, absolutely. The White House is always for peaceful protest.
Of course.
But, John, you know what the protesters are saying. They're saying, hey, Xi Jinping's got to go. Or loosen the COVID restrictions that are keeping people stuck in their houses for months. So between he's got to go or loosen restrictions, which side is the White House on when it comes to supporting the protesters?
Steve, we're on the side of peaceful protest. We're on the side of individuals being able to freely assemble and to express their views, whatever those views are. We're not taking a side in terms of what these protesters are about. Largely, though, Steve, that these protesters are really out there about the lockdown. Their main concern, 100%. What drove them to the streets, was the very severe, very stringent COVID policies by Xi's administration, and that's what's really been driving all this public protest.
All right, so he's very careful with his words. He says, we're not going to take sides on this thing, but it's probably because of the strict lockdowns, and maybe, sort of implying that maybe if the Chinese lifted some of the lockdowns up a little bit, that things wouldn't be so volatile there in China. But man, it is like twisting somebody's arm to try to get them to just say No, what China's doing is insane. In fact, let's take a look at some of this insanity while we're here. You can see this gentleman, unfortunately, is being escorted out of his, actual apartment by these Chinese goons. We'll probably play the full video maybe on the after party, but they're actually just dragging him out of there, right? This is somebody posted this on Twitter. Let's see where this came from. And, this is from the Great Translation Movement, TGTM official, from Hangzhou, Southeast Asia. Residents who are not infected with COVID, not even infected with COVID, are being forcibly taken to quarantine. Okay, you can see what that looks like right there. It's just ridiculous, right? So it's like they're actually going into people's homes and physically, violently removing them. It's absolutely insane. And the White House can't even comment on that. I guess it's like whatever happens in China happens in China. Now, meanwhile, you've got Chinese enterprise, the different technology that they have. We spent a lot of time talking about this yesterday. This is a clip that also was posted on Twitter from somebody in China, which is sharing an image. Actually, let's take a look at the tweet so we get some good clarity on this. This came from James Melville, and he said that Chinese social media users are reporting that their videos, their Huawei phones, are surreptitiously deleting videos of the anti-lockdown protests in China. Doesn't even notify them. And yesterday we played the clip of the young gentleman. I actually tweeted it on my timeline, where he is saying that they have these facial recognition cameras that can actually catch you jaywalking across the street and then issue you a jaywalking fine. You don't even have any due process at all. They just issue the fine. They know it's you, and they say you owe us money. They don't even ask you to pay for it. They just deduct it right out of your account. Better not cross the street that way again, you little terrorist. That's what's going on in China. And here's this video. You see it just scrolling in the background, right? You've got photos or videos of the protests literally just going gone, deleted. Person's highlighting them right there for us. So, welcome to those dystopian films. It's already here. It's already there, floating around, happening in China. And of course, we will continue to cover it. Now, that is it for us on that segment, my friends. Of course, we hope that you enjoyed it. Thank you for liking this video wherever you're watching it, and we'll see you on the next one.